Justice served.
Have you ever been made to feel worthless? Like you don't belong? Like every single day at work is a battle just to survive? I have. For 8 months, I endured psychological torture that broke me down piece by piece. 3 people made my life a living hell, and my manager did nothing to stop it. Until the day I decided enough was enough. My name is Rachel Morgan, and this is the story of how I went from being the target of workplace bullying to the person who exposed an entire toxic culture and took down everyone who participated in it. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about finding your voice when everyone tells you to stay silent, about fighting back when the system is designed to protect your abusers. And trust me, when I finally fought back, the destruction was beautiful. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when I still had hope. I was 26 years old when I joined Tech Vision Solutions as a junior project manager. After struggling through a year of unemployment following college, this job felt like salvation. The company was a mid-sized tech firm specializing in software development for corporate clients. Stable, growing, and seemingly professional. My interview process was smooth. I met with the hiring manager, David Brennan, who seemed kind and supportive. He talked about team culture, mentorship opportunities, and how they valued fresh perspectives. "We're like a family here," he said with a warm smile. "Everyone supports each other." I believed him. God, I was so naive. My first day was September 15th. I showed up early, dressed professionally, eager to make a good impression. David introduced me to my team, the Project Management Office, or PMO. And that's when I met them, the trio who would make my life hell. First, there was Christine Parker. She was 34, the senior project manager, and had been with the company for 6 years. Tall, blonde, always impeccably dressed in designer clothes. She had this way of smiling at you while her eyes stayed cold and calculating. Then there was Brandon Cole, another senior PM, 32 years old. He was the office golden boy, charming to executives, ruthless to anyone beneath him. The kind of guy who threw people under the bus and made it look like they jumped. And finally, Melissa Tran, 29-year-old project manager who'd been there for 3 years. She was quieter than the other two, but just as vicious. She was Christine's best friend and Brandon's ally and everything. Together, they ran the PMO like their personal kingdom, and David let them do whatever they wanted. My first week seemed okay. A little cold, maybe. Christine barely acknowledged me. Brandon made a few comments about how young I looked. Melissa just stared at me like I was an intruder. But I chalked it up to normal adjustment period stuff. New job jitters. I told myself to be patient, to prove myself, to earn their respect. I had no idea what was coming. The bullying started small. So small, I almost didn't notice at first. Week 2. I was excluded from a team lunch. "Oh, we thought you were busy," Christine said with that cold smile when I asked about it later. Week 3. Brandon started forgetting to include me in email chains about projects I was assigned to, then publicly criticizing me in meetings for not knowing information I'd never received. Week 4. Melissa began a pattern of giving me impossible deadlines with incomplete information, then reporting to David that I was struggling with basic tasks. But it got worse, so much worse. They started undermining me in meetings. I'd present an idea, and Christine would immediately shoot it down with condescending comments like, That's cute, Rachel. But in the real world, then Brandon would propose the exact same idea 10 minutes later, and everyone would praise his brilliance. They gave me the worst assignments, projects that were already failing, clients who were nightmares, impossible timelines. Then they'd criticize my performance when things inevitably went wrong. Christine started a rumor that I'd lied on my resume. It wasn't true, but suddenly people were looking at me differently, questioning my competence. Brandon would accidentally schedule meetings during my lunch breaks, then act annoyed when I showed up eating a sandwich. So unprofessional. He'd mutter loud enough for everyone to hear. Melissa created a group chat with the entire team except me. I only found out about it when I saw it mentioned in an email. When I asked to be added, she said, "It's just for senior staff." There were junior analysts in that chat. They'd talk over me in meetings, interrupt me constantly, dismiss everything I said. They made jokes at my expense and acted like I was being too sensitive when I didn't laugh along. The worst part? Nobody defended me. Other team members just looked away, grateful it wasn't happening to them. And David did nothing. Every time I tried to talk to him about it, he'd minimize the situation. They're just passionate about their work. You need to develop a thicker skin. Have you tried being more assertive? He made it clear that Christine, Brandon, and Melissa were valuable to him, and I was replaceable. By month 3, I was having panic attacks in the bathroom. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, dreading the next workday. I lost 15 pounds because stress killed my appetite. My girlfriend Emma was worried sick about me. "Quit," she begged me. "Rachel, this job is destroying you." But I couldn't. I needed the income. I needed the experience on my resume. And some stubborn part of me refused to let them win. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, if I was just better, they'd stop, that I could outlast them. I was wrong.
The breaking point came during a client presentation in late April, 7 months after I'd started. I'd been working on a project proposal for weeks. It was for a major potential client worth $2 million in annual recurring revenue. David had assigned it to me, calling it a development opportunity. I should have known it was a trap. I stayed late every night perfecting that proposal. I researched the client's industry, analyzed their pain points, designed custom solutions. It was easily the best work I'd ever done. The presentation was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. The client's executive team would be there, along with our CEO, David, and the PMO team. That morning, I arrived at the office to find Christine sitting at my desk, going through my computer. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than usual. She looked up without a hint of shame. "David asked me to review your presentation. He's concerned about quality control." My stomach dropped. "I didn't know about any review." "Well, now you do." She turned back to my screen. "Honestly, Rachel, this is pretty rough. The structure is all wrong, the data analysis is superficial, and your proposed solutions show a fundamental misunderstanding of the client's needs." "That's not true. I'm going to need to redo significant portions of this." She started making changes to my file. "You'll present it, but I'll be listed as co-lead on the project for quality assurance." She was stealing my work right in front of me. "No," I said quietly. "This is my project." She stood up, and despite being only a few inches taller than me, she suddenly seemed massive. "Excuse me?" "This is my project," I repeated, my voice shaking. "You're not taking credit for my work." Her eyes went cold. "Rachel, I'm trying to help you, not embarrass yourself and this company. But if you want to present subpar work and crash and burn in front of the CEO, be my guest." She walked away, leaving me trembling with rage and fear. I spent the next 4 hours going through my presentation, second-guessing everything. Had Christine been right? Was my work actually terrible? I couldn't tell anymore. They'd gotten so far into my head that I didn't trust my own judgment. The presentation started at 2 p.m. The conference room was packed. The client team, our CEO, Marcus Webb, David, Christine, Brandon, Melissa, and several other executives. I launched into my presentation, my voice steady despite my nerves. I walked them through the analysis, the proposed solutions, the implementation timeline. It was going well. I could see the client executives nodding, taking notes. Marcus looked impressed. Then Brandon interrupted. Rachel, can you clarify something? This cost estimate seems significantly lower than industry standard. Did you account for integration complexity? I had. I'd spent days on those calculations. Yes, the estimate includes... Because, he continued, talking over me, if we underbid this and then can't deliver, it damages our reputation. I'm concerned we're promising more than we can deliver just to win the contract. The implication was clear. I was being reckless and unprofessional. The estimate is accurate, I said firmly. I've broken down every cost component. Christine jumped in. Maybe we should take a step back and review the approach. Rachel, walk us through your methodology for the needs assessment. I did, and as I explained my process, she kept interrupting with questions designed to make me look incompetent. Did you consider X? Yes, I had. What about Y? Already addressed in slide 12. Shouldn't we factor in Z? That's literally what I just explained. Each interruption made me look more flustered, more unprepared. The client executives started exchanging glances. Marcus's expression shifted from impressed to concerned. By the time I finished, or rather, by the time Christine and Brandon finished dissecting my work, the energy in the room had completely changed. Thank you, Rachel, David said, his tone suggesting the presentation was a disaster. We'll follow up with you folks next week. The client team left looking unconvinced. Marcus left without saying a word to me. And Christine, Brandon, and Melissa wore identical smug smiles. I went to the bathroom and cried for 20 minutes. That evening, I received an email from David, CCing Christine and Brandon. Rachel, after today's presentation, it's clear we need to revisit your project responsibilities. Going forward, all client-facing work will require senior PM approval. Christine will take over the Axis Corp account. Let's schedule a discussion Monday morning about performance improvement plans. They'd humiliated me, sabotaged my presentation, and now I was being demoted. I drove home in a daze. Emma took one look at my face and wrapped me in her arms. That's it, she said. I don't care about the money. You're done with this place. But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. The fear and self-doubt transformed into something else. Rage. Pure, crystalline rage. I wasn't broken. I was done being their victim. That weekend, I made a decision. I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to let them force me out. I was going to destroy them. But I had to be smart about it. Emotional outbursts wouldn't work. Complaining to David was useless. I needed something bigger, something irrefutable. I needed evidence. Monday morning, I came to work with a plan. First, I started documenting everything. Every interaction, every email, every meeting. I kept a detailed log with dates, times, witnesses, and exact quotes of what was said. Second, I started recording. My state had one-party consent laws for recordings, which meant I could legally record conversations I was part of. I kept a recording app on my phone ready to capture evidence. Third, I went digging through company communications, old emails, shared drives, archived documents. I was looking for patterns, for proof that this wasn't just about me. What I found was horrifying. Christine, Brandon, and Melissa had done this before, multiple times. I found email threads discussing a previous team member named Jennifer who'd been too emotional and couldn't handle feedback. Reading between the lines, it was clear she'd been bullied out. I found performance reviews they'd written for various people over the years, filled with vague criticisms and impossible standards, but only for certain employees. Women, mostly. People of color. Anyone who didn't fit their clique. I found a private email chain between Christine and Melissa from 3 months before I was hired, discussing how they needed to get rid of dead weight and how David was too soft to make tough staffing decisions. They weren't just bullies. They were systematically pushing people out, and David was letting them do it. Then I found the smoking gun. It was an email from Brandon to Christine, sent 2 weeks after I'd started. New girl seems smart, but not a culture fit. Too ambitious. Might challenge us. Recommend we create performance issues early. Usual playbook. Exclude from info loops. Public criticism. Impossible projects. Should have her gone by Q2. They'd planned to destroy me from the beginning. Not because I was bad at my job, but because I might threaten their control. I made copies of everything. I backed it up in 3 different places, and then I started planning my next move. But I needed more than just documentation. I needed to catch them in the act, on record, saying something they couldn't deny or minimize. That opportunity came 2 weeks later. We had a team meeting scheduled for a Friday afternoon. David was out of the office at a conference, which meant Christine was running the meeting. I knew from experience that these meetings were when they felt most free to be vicious. Without David there to pretend to be professional, they'd let their true colors show. I came prepared. Recording app running on my phone in my pocket. Notepad ready. Calm exterior, hiding the strategic mind underneath. The meeting started normally enough. Project updates, timeline discussions, resource allocation. But then Christine brought up my performance issues. I think we need to address Rachel's recent mistakes, she said, looking around the table. The Axis Corp presentation was a disaster, and it's affecting team morale. I'd like to address that, I said calmly. What specific mistakes are you referring to? The entire approach was flawed. Brandon jumped in. Basic project management errors. It's concerning. Can you give me specific examples so I can learn from them? They exchanged glances. They weren't used to me pushing back. The cost analysis was unrealistic, Christine said. Actually, the client's procurement team emailed yesterday saying our estimate was competitive and comprehensive. Would you like me to forward you that email? I deliberately held on to that information. The client had been impressed. It was Christine and Brandon's sabotage that had made the presentation seem problematic. Christine's jaw tightened. Well, regardless, your attitude lately has been difficult. You're defensive when receiving feedback. I'm asking for specific examples so I can improve. That's not defensive. That's professional development. Melissa jumped in, her voice dripping with fake concern. Rachel, I think what they're trying to say is that you don't fit well with the team dynamic. Some people just aren't cut out for this environment. What do you mean by team dynamic? You know, you're just different. You don't get our culture. Different how? The room went quiet. They realized they'd backed themselves into a corner. Any specific answer might reveal their discrimination. Christine decided to go for the kill. Look, Rachel, we've all discussed this, and the consensus is that you're not working out. We think you should start looking for opportunities elsewhere. Save yourself and us the hassle of a formal performance improvement plan. There it was, the admission I needed. So, you want me to quit? I asked. We're suggesting it would be best for everyone, Brendan said. Even though I've met all my project deadlines, my client satisfaction scores are high, and I've delivered on every assigned task. This isn't just about metrics, Melissa said. It's about fit. I looked around the table at the other team members. 5 people who'd been silent through all of this. Junior PMs and analysts who'd watched me be torn apart for months and said nothing. Does anyone else agree with this assessment? I asked them directly. They looked at their laptops, their phones, anywhere but at me. Silence. I'm not quitting, I said firmly. If you believe my performance is inadequate, then follow proper procedure. Document the issues, provide specific feedback, give me opportunity to improve. But I'm not leaving because of fit. Christine's face flushed red. This attitude is exactly the problem. My attitude of asking for documented feedback and proper process? That's the problem? You're being insubordinate, Brandon snapped. I'm being professional. There's a difference. Christine stood up. This meeting is over. Rachel, you and I will have a private discussion with David when he returns. I gathered my things, calmly. I look forward to it. I'll be bringing documentation of our conversation today. As I left, I heard Melissa mutter, "What a bitch." Perfect. All of it captured on my recording. That night, I compiled everything. The recordings, the emails, the documentation of every bullying incident. I organized it into a comprehensive report that detailed systematic harassment, hostile work environment, and managerial negligence. It was 87 pages long. Then I faced a decision. Who to send it to? David was useless. He'd proven that repeatedly. HR had been unhelpful the one time I tentatively approached them. Going through internal channels would just give Christine, Brandon, and Melissa warning to destroy evidence and retaliate against me. I needed to go bigger. TechVision was a privately held company, but it had a board of directors and investors. More importantly, it had recently been in the news for winning several diversity and inclusion awards. They'd made public commitments to creating an inclusive workplace culture. I researched the board members and found someone perfect. Angela Martinez, an independent board member who'd made her career advocating for workplace equality. She'd written articles about toxic workplaces and sat on several nonprofit boards focused on employment justice. I drafted an email to her, copying the CEO, Marcus Webb, and the head of HR. The subject line, formal complaint, systematic harassment, hostile work environment, and managerial negligence. I attached my 87-page report. In the email, I was direct. I am filing this formal complaint after exhausting internal channels. The attached documentation shows 8 months of systematic bullying, harassment, and discrimination by senior project managers Christine Parker, Brandon Cole, and Melissa Tran, enabled by manager David Brennan's failure to act. This behavior violates company policy, creates legal liability, and contradicts TechVision's public commitments to workplace inclusion. I included my recordings, the email evidence showing their premeditation, documentation of other employees they'd targeted, and a timeline of every incident. Then I added one more element. I am simultaneously filing complaints with the EEOC and the State Labor Board regarding the hostile work environment and discriminatory treatment. I am providing TechVision the opportunity to address these issues internally before those complaints proceed. The threat was clear. Fix this or face legal and regulatory consequences. I hovered over the send button for 10 minutes. This was it. Once I sent this, there was no going back. I'd either win or be destroyed. Emma came up behind me and squeezed my shoulder. You've got this. I hit send. Then I forwarded a copy to my personal attorney. Yes, I had hired one, and to my personal email as backup. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Sunday night. By 8:15 a.m. Monday morning, my phone rang. It was Angela Martinez. "Ms. Morgan," she said, her voice serious, I've read your complaint. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. I'm going to need you to not go into the office today. Can you make yourself available for a video call at 2 p.m.? Yes, absolutely. Good. I want you to know if what you've documented is accurate, there will be significant consequences. The board takes these matters very seriously. It's all accurate. I have more evidence if needed. I'm sure you do. We'll talk this afternoon. She hung up and I sat there shaking. It was happening. It was actually happening.
At 2 p.m., I joined a video call with Angela Martinez, Marcus Webb, CEO, the head of HR, Patricia Simmons, and the company's general counsel. For 3 hours, I walked them through everything. I played recordings. I showed emails. I provided my detailed log of incidents. Angela's face grew progressively more severe as I presented. Marcus looked physically ill. Patricia kept shaking her head in disbelief. "Why didn't you come to HR earlier?" Patricia asked at one point. "I did," I said, pulling up an email. March 12th. I sent a message to the HR general inbox describing concerns about my treatment. I received a response from an HR coordinator saying someone would follow up. No one ever did. Patricia checked her system. I see the ticket. It was closed as resolved. No follow-up documented. "Who closed it?" Angela asked. Patricia's face went pale. "David Brennan. He has HR system access as a department head. He closed it himself, noting that he'd addressed the concerns with the team member. He'd buried my complaint." "This is extensive," the general counsel said. "Miss Morgan, to be clear, you're alleging systematic harassment, hostile work environment, retaliation for raising concerns, and management complicity. Those are serious legal claims." "I'm not alleging. I'm documenting. It happened. I have proof." Marcus finally spoke. "Rachel, I need to apologize. This should never have happened in our company. If I'd known—" "With respect, sir, you should have known. This wasn't happening in a vacuum. Christine, Brandon, and Melissa had the highest turnover rate in the company. Multiple people left their teams under questionable circumstances. The pattern was visible if anyone had looked." He didn't have a response to that. Angela took control. "Here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, Christine Parker, Brandon Cole, Melissa Tran, and David Brennan are suspended pending a full investigation. Rachel, you'll also be on paid leave during the investigation, not as a disciplinary measure, but for your protection. I want to continue working. I'm not hiding. We'll arrange for you to work remotely. We need to separate you from the individuals involved during the investigation." Over the next 2 weeks, a third-party firm conducted a comprehensive investigation. They interviewed over 20 current and former employees. They reviewed years of emails and communications. They analyzed turnover data and exit interview notes. What they found was damning. Christine, Brandon, and Melissa had systematically targeted at least 7 employees over 5 years. They'd created a culture of fear where people either joined their clique or were pushed out. David had enabled them because they were high performers, and he was conflict-averse. The investigation found evidence of discrimination based on gender, age, and race. They found documentation of performance reviews being falsified. They found evidence that David had buried multiple complaints. The final investigation report was delivered to the board on a Wednesday afternoon. By Thursday morning, TechVision issued a company-wide announcement. Following an investigation into workplace conduct concerns, TechVision has terminated the employment of Christine Parker, Brandon Cole, Melissa Tran, and David Brennan, effective immediately. These separations are the result of serious policy violations that are inconsistent with our values and expectations. We are committed to fostering an inclusive, respectful workplace and will be implementing significant changes to our management structure and HR processes. They were gone. All 4 of them, fired in disgrace. The news spread through the tech community fast. When people asked why they'd been fired, the official statement was vague, but word leaked.
Christine's LinkedIn showed her as former senior PM within hours, and recruiters started asking questions. Their reputations were destroyed.
2 days after the terminations, Angela Martinez called me again. Rachel, the board would like to offer you a new position. We're restructuring the PMO, and we want you to lead the rebuild as interim director of project management. Significant raise, direct report to Marcus, and authority to rebuild the team culture. I was 26 years old. They were offering me a director-level position, a role typically requiring 10-plus years of experience. Why me? I asked. Because you had the courage to stand up when no one else would. Because you documented everything with the precision of someone who cares about truth. And because we need someone who understands what a toxic culture looks like and is committed to building something better. I accepted. Over the next 6 months, I rebuilt that department from the ground up. I hired 4 new project managers, focusing on diverse candidates and people who valued collaboration over competition. I implemented anonymous feedback systems, regular team health checks, and clear escalation processes for concerns. I created an environment where people felt safe, supported, and valued. The old team members who'd been silent during my bullying, some stayed and adapted to the new culture. Others left, uncomfortable in an environment where cruelty wasn't tolerated. I didn't force anyone out, I just made it clear what the standards were. The junior PMs and analysts who'd watched me suffer, several apologized privately. I appreciated the apologies, but I also made it clear. Silence enables abuse. In the new PMO, we spoke up for each other. As for the Axis Corp deal, the one that had been sabotaged during that presentation, I followed up with the client directly. I addressed their concerns, revised the proposal based on their feedback, and we won the contract. $2 million in annual recurring revenue, credited to my team. Marcus personally congratulated me in a company-wide meeting. TechVision also made systemic changes beyond my department. They hired a new, more proactive HR director. They implemented mandatory anti-bullying training. They created an independent ombudsman position for employees to report concerns safely. They even started tracking management turnover rates and conducting stay interviews to understand why people remained at the company, not just exit interviews for why they left. The culture began to shift, slowly but noticeably. As for Christine, Brandon, Melissa, and David, their careers took very different trajectories after TechVision. Christine struggled to find comparable work. Her network in the industry asked questions. References were carefully worded, but revealed enough. She eventually took a position at a much smaller company at a lower level. Brandon tried to claim he'd been wrongfully terminated, but TechVision's thorough documentation made that impossible. Last I heard, he'd left the tech industry entirely. Melissa found another job relatively quickly, but I heard through mutual connections that she was on thin ice within 6 months. Patterns repeat. David resurfaced at a startup a year later. I noticed several of his former employees commenting on his LinkedIn announcement with carefully neutral statements. The lack of genuine endorsements spoke volumes. So, what did I learn from 8 months of hell and the fight that followed? First, document everything. The moment you sense something is wrong, start keeping records. Dates, times, witnesses, exact quotes, save emails, make backups. That documentation saved my career and destroyed my abusers. Second, bullies count on your silence. They count on you being too afraid, too ashamed, or too worn down to fight back. Your silence is their power. Taking that away is your weapon. Third, internal channels don't always work, especially when the people you're reporting to are part of the problem. Sometimes you have to go over heads, around systems, and directly to people with actual authority and accountability. Fourth, you are not crazy. If something feels wrong, if you're being treated poorly, if you're being gaslighted into thinking you're the problem, trust your instincts.
Document what's happening and validate your own experience. 5th, legal protections exist for a reason. Learn your rights. Know the laws around workplace harassment, hostile work environments, and retaliation. Consult an attorney if you can. Knowledge is power. 6th, strategic patience beats emotional outbursts. I wanted to scream at Christine, Brandon, and Melissa 1,000 times. Instead, I stayed calm, gathered evidence, and waited for the right moment to strike. That strategic approach made all the difference. And finally, standing up is terrifying, but necessary. I was scared every day while building my case. Scared of retaliation, scared of losing my job, scared of being proven wrong. But the alternative, continuing to suffer in silence, was worse. Not everyone's story will end like mine. Sometimes whistleblowers lose. Sometimes bullies win. Sometimes the system protects the wrong people. But sometimes, just sometimes, courage and evidence and persistence create justice. Christine Parker told me I didn't fit the culture. She was right. I didn't fit her toxic, cruel, discriminatory culture, and I made sure that culture was destroyed. My name is Rachel Morgan. I survived 8 months of workplace bullying that nearly broke me, and then I fought back in the most effective way possible, with truth, documentation, and the willingness to go all the way to the top. Those bullies thought I was weak. They thought I'd quit or break. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong on every count. If you're going through workplace bullying right now, hear this. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not the problem. And you have more power than you think. Document everything. Know your rights, find your allies, and when you're ready, fight back. Because people like Christine, Brandon, and Melissa, they only win when we stay silent. And I refuse to be silent.